my essay called Cauldron of Discord.
Can you speak up real loud, please?
Oh yeah, this is called Cauldron of Discord. Race in America is a cauldron of discord. Most of the time, the water simmers under a low heat. However, when rage strokes the flames, the water boils over. We all know this is what unfolded in the immediate aftermath of Michael Brown's death on August 9, 2014 in Ferguson, Missouri. Regardless of the specifics of whether Michael Brown was unarmed versus armed, or whether he struggled with the officer or not, his death inflamed the nation because it symbolized a larger, ingrained problem. While slavery technically ceased at the end of the Civil War, the violent protests in Ferguson awakened us all to the reality that too many African Americans are still enslaved. We've moved beyond the carnage of Gettysburg, but not what the carnage represents in our 21st century selves. There's a test I recently took online about racial bias. Through Harvard University, Project Implicit seeks to understand our unconscious associations about such topics as race, gender, and mental illnesses. The results from my test said I have an underlying cognitive preference for European Americans over African Americans. I don't deny the results. I wish I could blow up my racial prejudice like a candlelight. I wish I could burn off the history I was born into. I wish I could set arson to my mind and start from scratch. Of course, I must contend with the prejudice I carry. Rather than deluding ourselves, we all must stare down the fact that white privilege is alive and kicking within Old Glory's 50 states. The protests in Ferguson made this abundantly clear. However, I fear that as weeks, months, and years pass, all cauldron will go back to a simmer. Yes, the people made their voices known, but can there be substantial change to a hierarchical system embedded into the very foundation of our country? I mean this literally. African Americans built the White House. I have white skin. By this fact alone, I was born with certain unearned privileges. Peggy McAnish, I think, a groundbreaking essay, White Privilege, Unpacking the Invisible Knapsack, has a list of 26 statements describing how her white skin had given her unearned social advantages. For example, quote, I can, if I wish, arrange to be in the company of people of my race most of the time. Quote, I can be sure that my children will be given curricular materials that testify to the existence of their race. Quote, I am never asked to speak for all the people of my racial group. The current version of white privilege grants these advantages in such a way that the receiver could easily fail to recognize them as such. Once we truly recognize the invisible weightless knapsack, what steps must we take now in 2014? The photographer Myra Green is moving the conversation in the right direction. Since the white race is America's normative default race, she recently released a collection titled My White Friends, with an aim to break down this barrier. By placing her white subjects in a racial context, she is seeking to change the mainstream lexicon of how we speak and write. While Green has often been asked to be photographed solely because of her race, such a question had never been posed to her white subjects. Indeed, when she initially explained her project to her white subjects, their first question was typically why. My White Friends offers a visual representation of this double standard. Thus, Myra Green is addressing a larger societal issue stemming from our own perception. America is moving in a racially pluralistic direction. We are living in a globalized society where an overwhelming racial majority is slowly beginning to crumble. Will the right race be the default race in 2015 and 2015? Now that Ferguson has slapped us awake, let's start the conversation we all must have. I don't want to simply shrug my shoulders and walk away at the skyscraper-sized problem of white privilege. As a reader of Words Apart, regardless of your race or ethnicity, I hope you feel the same. We must and can do better than the status quo. Thank you.